Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all the return of the Anime Favorites video segment right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and finally, I'm back to bring you all a brand new Anime Favorites video. Now, the Anime Favorites video segment is one that I started all the way back in 2011, and it was pretty much just a means for me to be able to make videos talking about some of my favorite anime and to give you all my viewers the opportunity to go ahead and, pick up a discussion with me in the comments, share your thoughts on some of these animes as well. Now, I went ahead and I put the series on hiatus for, as you can see, a great number of years, but I decided to go ahead and resurrect the segment because recently I found myself in a position to where I've been introducing a lot of people to some older anime that they have not seen before, and these are some of my die-hard favorites. I'm talking about some animes that I grew up on, and I'm in a position now, especially with my job and what it details with me running the anime club where I work, I'm introducing these kids to a lot of anime they've never even heard about before. So I thought it sort of inspired me to go ahead and pick this segment back up. This is somewhat of a controversial pick. Why? Because there's been a debate with this series ever since it first premiered, and that is whether or not this series even qualifies as being an anime. But what we're talking about for this video is none other than Avatar: The Last Airbender. So before I jump into what makes this series my favorite, I do want to go ahead and take this time to address that question of, is Avatar: The Last Airbender even an anime in the first place? Now, the common argument against Avatar is that, it's an American product, because Avatar: The Last Airbender premiered and aired on the Nickelodeon network and then later Nicktoons, and for all intent and purpose, this is a Nickelodeon production. It was figureheaded by Nickelodeon Animation Studios. The bulk of the series was made at their animation studio, and although they did outsource some work to other animation studios, and some of them even overseas, the bulk of the production was still made here in the States. And so that seems to be the very common argument against it, is that because it wasn't made in Japan by the Japanese, it cannot be considered an anime. I am of the party that will argue against that, and my thing is, I think that it has to deal with the content. It has to deal with the material itself. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a series that very much is heavily influenced by Asian culture, and different Asian cultures at that. So we're not even talking about just Japan. We're talking about Chinese culture. We're talking about Tibetan culture. We're talking about Inuit culture. There are so many influences that have all contributed to the conception of this series. And so a few things I'm going to mention in argument for Avatar being an anime. Number one, the art style. The art style, as you can see in my background, very heavily influenced by Oriental and Asian animators and their art style, okay? Right down from the way in which the eyes are drawn to the way in which their clothing is drawn. Even in the animation itself, the fluidity of it, the action of it, very much the creators went ahead and they used anime as the major influence in order to make this series. Now, going back to the whole cultural references, okay? Now, even though Avatar: The Last Airbender does have its own world that that's unique to this series, even with the four nations that we see in the series, the Fire Nation, that's Japan. Heavily influenced by Japan, not just because it's a series of islands just like Japan, but even in the way that the Fire Nation dress, in the way that they speak, and things of that nature, heavily influenced by Japan. The Earth Kingdom, that's China. If nothing else, the Wall of Ba Sing Se, that's a callback to the Great Wall of China, okay? And then even how the Earth Kingdom dresses, the way in which the Earth King is treated and how he's introduced into the series. All of those things very much Chinese inspired. The air nomads, that's Tibetan monks, okay? Right down to the way in which they dress, their entire lifestyle and culture, their thoughts and aspects of spirituality, very much Tibetan, monks. And then the Water Tribe, that's the Inuit culture, both from the North Pole and the South Pole, very much inspired by the Inuit. And then even digging a little bit deeper into more of the content and more of the material. One of the major aspects of this series is the whole idea of element bending, whether it be earth bending, fire bending, water bending, air bending, whatever have you. Each bending style is a martial art, and it's inspired by a real martial art. All those things I think contribute to this series very much being considered an anime. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and take this time. I'm going to spend the rest of the video talking about what is it about Avatar: The Last Airbender that makes it one of my favorite anime. Okay, so first and foremost, the story and the characters. And while those two things might seem very much different, I'm going to talk about both of these things in the same breath. And the reason for that being is because the one thing I love so much about this series is that it is very much a character-driven story. I'm talking about the story of the series, not the plot. We all know what the plot is. The plot is that Katara and Sokka discover Aang in an iceberg. He's been trapped there for 100 years. He's the last airbender. He's the Avatar, and he's the one, in his absence, this 100-year war has been waged across the 4 nations, and that's headed by the Fire Nation. And so it's Aang's job as the Avatar, as the one who is supposed to restore balance to the world, to pretty much end the war. And Aang has less than a year to master all 4 elements, all 4 forms of bending, and he has to defeat the Fire Lord before Sozin's Comet comes at Summer's End, and it would give the Fire Nation enough ammunition to pretty much win the war. That's the plot of the series. What I'm talking about with the story is all of the things that get us from point A to B, from point B to C, from point C to D. I'm talking about the things that the events that are set into motion either by the characters, by their decisions, by the consequences of their actions. All of these things contribute to the story. So what am I talking about? Okay, the entire premise behind Avatar: The Last Airbender, what kicks off the plot to begin with, is the fact that Aang refused his obligation. He refused the call. He's the Avatar, but he's also a 12-year-old kid. And when he runs away, the genocide of his people, the 100-year war, these are consequences to Aang's actions. And with that same token, when Sokka and Katara find him and they free him from the iceberg, they have a choice. They don't have to go with Aang. They don't have to help him on his quest. They make the choice to leave their home and to help him along that journey. Also, we have Zuko, who serves as our primary antagonist for the first season. Zuko's whole goal is to find the Avatar and return him to his father, the Fire Lord, so that Zuko can be accepted back into the fold and win back his honor and take his place again in the Fire Nation as Prince. But Zuko is the one leading this hunt. He doesn't have to go after Aang. And he also doesn't have to butt heads with his uncle Iroh and with all the other figureheads in the Fire Nation in order to get this thing done. So there are so many things. I mean, going back to even Toph, who's Aang's earthbending teacher. She leaves everything she knows and her entire life she leaves behind to go on this adventure and to teach Aang earthbending. She doesn't have to do that. And with that comes consequences to her actions, with her being wanted and being hunted and having her rich parents hire bounty hunters to bring her back home, and that creates even more drama for the gang on their journey. These things, I think, go hand in hand with each other, and it was so refreshing when I discovered this series, because there wasn't a lot of sophisticated storytelling like that being done on television, especially in an animated children's program. I've said it many times before on my channel in previous videos, and that I've never liked the idea of children's programming and animation especially just being rendered and reduced to kids fare, child's play. Like this, because of the medium in which it's in, it shouldn't be taken seriously. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of those series that really questions that notion, and it really puts up a very strong argument against the notion, because this series was so well acclaimed. I mean, it was award winning. It's won a few Emmy Awards, but it was so acclaimed by critics and by viewers. And then not only that, even though this series is primarily targeted towards audiences 6 to 13 years of age, there are so many adults who appreciated this series. And I was 17 when I first discovered Avatar: The Last Airbender, and this was like in 2006. This was a year after the show had started. I got introduced to the show late, but even at that age, I could appreciate what this series was doing. And so the story and the characters, like I said, hand in hand, character-driven narratives. I love them. I love them. And then with some more detail about the characters themselves, I mean, Avatar does have a large cast of characters. The only one of them which is the least developed would be Ozai, and that's because Ozai was pretty much our big bad villain who stayed in the shadows the majority of the series. But for the rest of them, I mean, for Zuko and Azula, both of them are very well-rounded, well-written antagonists, and I'll get into more detail with them when I discuss each of them separately in my favorite heroes, favorite villains video, which will be coming up after this one. But I mean, with our main characters, with our protagonists, all of them, they all have adequate backstories, they all have goals and ambitions, they all have objectives, they all have flaws, and like I said, the role in which they play in the series, to say that these are children characters that are being written, and like I said, that story, it's all centered around their choices, their actions, and the consequences of said choices and actions. Once again, this was something that we weren't getting a lot of back then, and I would even argue that we're not getting enough of now, especially with children's programming. So that's another notch in the belt to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then, I mean, going into a little bit more detail about the writing itself, with some of the themes that occur in the series, with some of the mythology, some of the world building, like I said, all heavily influenced by Asian culture, but the creators did a good job at incorporating this material and writing it in a way to where they make it their own, and I think it holds up, especially in regards to other anime series. I think all of that's really well done. I think the way in which the comedy is written, the way in which the levity is implemented within these episodes, and I mean, and you have a really good variety. This series has 61 episodes. And with all of, and it's broken up into 3 seasons, and even not just the series as the whole, but even in their individual seasons, you know, we have episodes that are very comical and lighthearted. We have episodes that are very, very serious in tone. All of which I think is a good blend, and like I said, I think another notch in this series' belt, another credit to it, is its ability to be able to entice and intrigue and entertain both children and adults alike. So that's pretty much going to wrap up my thoughts on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, I could go on, but then we'd be staring down an hour video. And I mean, I've already discussed this series to some length before. As I mentioned previously, I will be doing a favorite heroes, favorite villains video for Zuko and Azula because they're my 2 favorite characters from this series. And I've also discussed the series in more detail when I discuss my top 5 favorite episodes from this series. For those of you all who have yet to check that out, please feel free to do so. And if you need some assistance, I'll go ahead and post an annotation probably here on the video so you all can check out my top 5 favorite Avatar: The Last Airbender episodes. So that's going to wrap up this anime favorites video. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. Please, in the comments below, leave your thoughts on this series. Let me know what you all think. Let me know what you all think about this debate about whether or not Avatar: The Last Airbender should be considered as an anime. Yes or no, and then by all means, share your opinion why. Also, let me know who are some of your favorite characters from the series. And finally, let me all know what you think of this video and what you guys think of this segment. This is something that I would like to bring back on a more regular basis. I have a list of anime that I'm just chomping at the bit to tackle, so I want to hear your thoughts on this. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.